Adam Edstrom scores 3 goals and puts on a show during the Rangers rookie series against the Philadelphia Flyers. Plus, which other Rangers stood out during the 2-game set?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1140 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com right now to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers, since the last time we talked, they played a couple of rookie games, the Ranger rookies against the Flyer rookies in Allentown. Those games took place on Friday night and Saturday night. Friday was a 4-3 shootout win for the New York Rangers. Saturday was a 3-2 overtime win for the Philadelphia Flyers. So the two teams split the games that occur in Allentown, and very just fun games. It's a lot of it's an enjoyable experience, to see all these rookies in action at the same time. I mean, once the season begins, all these guys, some of them will go back to college and others are going to be going to the AHL and back to junior hockey, whatever it might be. So it's nice to see all these prospects on the ice at the same time. And I think a lot of Rangers really had a nice showing for themselves through these two games. Unfortunately, the Rangers did not bother to cover this game or these games at all. They didn't have any kind of camera equipment. There was no way to stream it. Obviously, it wasn't going to be on MSG. I mean, that would just be crazy if we would ask for something like that. But fortunately for us, the Flyers, I guess we got to thank the Flyers. We'll do this once and once only here on Locked On New York Rangers, but we got to thank the Flyers for streaming this game on their website, both of these games, in fact, and did a nice job with it. Wasn't like the kind of state-of-the-art, production that you're going to see during the regular season, certainly the playoffs or anything like that, but they were at least there. They at least allowed us to watch these prospects in action. But I cannot talk for a single second longer without going to the guy that basically stole the show over the weekend, not just for the Rangers, but for both teams. I think far and away the best player on the ice during these two games was Adam Edstrom. Obviously, Edstrom, former 6th-round pick, made his debut with the Rangers last season, played in 11 games, and was eventually squeezed out of the lineup through really no fault of his own. He just kind of fell victim to the Rangers making a couple of trades, bringing in some rental-type players, and of course, Matt Rempe really emerged. For a while, Rempe and Edstrom were the wingers on the fourth line, and as I mentioned in a recent episode, we did the crossover with Locked On Flyers. Shout out to those guys. I know Rachel got to attend both of these games, but I was talking about how Adam Edstrom basically became, the forgotten man for the Rangers, and it's not because he did anything wrong. It's just that, again, he got squeezed out of the lineup. There just wasn't a spot for him, and Matt Rempe kind of came in and stole all of his thunder. And nothing against Matt Rempe either. He's got to do what he's got to do once he gets to the NHL. But, man, if Adam Edstrom was the forgotten man, he is forgotten no more because, again, he scores 3 goals during these two games. One of them was on the power play. One was at even strength. Those were both on Friday. And then on Saturday, he scored a shorthanded goal on a breakaway as well. Like I said, the best player on the ice for either team over this 2-game set. And it wasn't just the goals. The goals are awesome, obviously, and that'll certainly get your attention. But, man, this guy was out there looking like he was fired out of every shift, showed some really impressive bursts, some impressive skating, especially for a big man, and was kind of mixing it up, during, it got a little chippy at times during these two games. And obviously he's a big guy, he tends to jump off the screen to begin with. But anytime there was a scrum or whatever, it seemed like, Edstrom was in the middle of that. He was playing on the Rangers' top power play unit. I believe he was also, he was definitely on the penalty kill. I believe they were using him as what was sort of the top penalty kill unit as well. And in fact, there was a situation where the Rangers, they had a 5-on-3 to try to kill off, and they were not able to do that. The Flyers did score when it was 5-on-3, but the 3 players that they put on the ice during the 5-on-3 for the Rangers to try to kill it off were Edstrom and then Matthew Robertson and Trey Mancini. We're going to have some thoughts on all 3 of those players. We'll get to the other 2 a little bit later. But yeah, bottom line, Edstrom went out there and really improved his stock. And, obviously he's got to keep it going. We've got, proper training camp coming up here for the Rangers, but he did nothing but help his stock in this organization, help his chances of making the opening night roster. Will he be out there on opening night? I still feel like the odds are probably a little bit against it. The fact that Matt Rempe isn't even in this rookie camp probably tells you that he's got the inside lane to an opening night roster spot. And then, of course, there's other veterans in the mix. Adam Ernie is on the PTO. Sam Carrick is there. Brodzinski, VZ, all those guys, that the usual suspects that we've been talking about recently. But there's going to be a heck of a battle for spots on that Ranger fourth line heading into the season here. And what I also want to do, I mentioned he scored 3 goals. Let's go ahead, take you guys through the 3 goals that Adam Edstrom scored in these 2 games. I know not everybody was, able to watch these games. I believe they're still available on the Flyers website. So if you want to go back and check out any of this stuff, should be there for you. But yeah, the first goal was on Friday night. You had the Rangers on a power play. Now, this goal, I can't describe it very well because during the stream, the Flyers stream on their website, it's preseason for everybody, including, the TV production people. For the first 13 minutes or so of Friday's game, they only had one camera available, and that was the one way up in the nosebleeds. I think the Flyers announcers were actually trying to manually adjust where the camera was going because he couldn't quite see the full rink. But as far as I could tell, I know the Rangers were on the power play. It sounds like there was a shot. I think it was a one-timer, and then Edstrom was there in deep, and he basically just buried the rebound, and at that point gave the Rangers a 1-0 lead about 5 minutes into the action. So there was that. Then Edstrom had another chance from the doorstep not too long after this, and, tough save was made on that play. He was also out there, was Edstrom with Dylan Rubrick and Yaroslav Hemler. This is kind of the giant line for the Rangers. Dylan Rubrick also goes 6'7", as does Adam Edstrom, and Hemler, I want to say, is about 6'4". So that was kind of the big line. I think they were kind of skating as the third line for the Rangers. But yeah, it wasn't too long after this that Edstrom, again, he had another chance on a breakaway, picked up a loose puck and basically just exploded toward the net. Got behind everybody. His shot was denied, but again, showing some impressive bursts once again for a big man. And I realized, look, he's out there against fellow rookies, and the NHL is a whole different monster. We know that. But man, Adam Edstrom, especially in Friday's game, but also in Saturday's game as well, just jumping off the screen. And then we get to his second goal. You get a one-timer by defenseman Case McCarthy from the blue line. The save is made, but Edstrom's right there on the doorstep as well. He buries the rebound. We saw a video that was posted on Twitter. I want to say it was Molly Walker who posted a video of Adam Edstrom in front of, the Ranger goalie getting some work as a net front presence. And I mentioned at the time, when we were covering the early portions of this rookie camp, that when you've got a player like that, with that kind of a build, that kind of a frame, and a player that's that immovable, then certainly you owe it to yourself to at least give him a shot in that role. Is he going to be as nasty at deflections and as surgical with deflections as somebody like Chris Kreider? Probably not, but you know what? The bottom line is a player like that, both from providing screens, maybe getting some deflections, and maybe cleaning up some loose change that's there in the crease. Yeah, you owe it to yourself to at least give him a shot in that role. And Edstrom, during these 2 games, anytime the Rangers were on the power play, he was the guy there. So that was awesome to see. And also, got to mention this too, he was very close to a hat trick on Friday. He actually put a shot off the crossbar in game 1. So this kid was just out there flying on all cylinders. And then he had a hand in each of the 2 Ranger goals in Saturday's game as well. The Rangers were down 2-0 on Saturday. You had a shot from the blue line by Matthew Robertson. The Flyer announcers were actually kind of wondering if Edstrom deflected it. I don't believe that he did. And again, you don't have a million different camera cuts and all these slow motion angles and all that stuff for a game like this. But as far as I could tell, he did not tip it. So it is Robertson's goal. And, again, speak of somebody who needs a goal. And we're going to get to Robertson a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, Edstrom was still there. He was providing the screen right in the middle of everything. And then to tie Saturday's game, because at this point it's 2-1 after the goal by Robertson. And you've got a situation where the Rangers are shorthanded. The Flyers had a 5-minute power play due to Brett Berard spearing somebody and getting ejected from the game. We'll save Berard talk for probably the next episode because we're going to do 2 episodes on these 2 games combined. This one's a little bit more focused on Friday's game. Next episode will be a little bit more focused on Saturday's game. But while we're talking about Edstrom, we got to talk about his Saturday goal here. And basically, again, yeah, Rangers are shorthanded for 5 minutes. The puck came out of the Ranger zone. Edstrom is just Johnny on the spot. Again, he explodes up the ice, gets to the loose puck before anybody else does, gets behind the defense, a little forehand backhand, tucks the puck home, and ties the game for the Rangers on Saturday. So that was the third and final of Edstrom's 3 goals, but just a fantastic showing for the Ranger big man here. And as far as him making the team, I touched on it a couple of minutes ago. Don't rule it out. We've seen plenty of examples where the Rangers have some young players and you're not really necessarily expecting them to make the opening night roster, or maybe they get called up mid-season a little bit earlier than expected, a little bit earlier than scheduled, but the Rangers don't really get hung up on that. If they feel like somebody is ready to bring something to the table and contribute right here and right now, they'll make it happen. They don't get really too hung up on young age or draft status or whatever it might be. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. And Edstrom's obviously going to have to keep the pedal to the metal. But if he continues to play as well in training camp and the preseason games as he did in these two games, he's definitely going to at least give the Rangers something to think about. We'll see how it goes. But we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second here. I want to discuss the frantic finish of Friday night's game. Again, the Rangers won this game in a shootout, so obviously very, very exciting there. The final score of that game was 4-3. I think I wrote 3-2 on the side graphic here for anybody watching on YouTube, but we will discuss that either way in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you will be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sports book. All right, we're going to go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers, continue breaking down everything that happened, specifically on the first of these two games, the Friday night game between the Rangers and the Flyers. Once again, the Rangers won that game 4-3 in a shootout. So you had a wild finish to this game, and to kind of just summarize how we got here, the Rangers, it's getting late in the third period, they're up 3-2. You have the two goals by Adam Edstrom. He scored the first two goals of the game. And the third Ranger goal that broke the 2-2 tie was scored by Kalle Väisänen. And this was probably the prettiest goal scored by either team during either of these two games. You had Bryce McConnell-Barker on the ice. We've talked about him a little bit recently and how there could be an opportunity for him to, at least make his Ranger debut, a cup of coffee kind of a situation where he's up for maybe like 3 games or so, whatever it might be. But McConnell-Barker, a center, he made an amazing pass across the ice from the left side to the right side to Adam Sikora, basically leading Sikora from the neutral zone into the Flyers zone. Sikora was moving up the right side. He receives the pass. He makes a centering pass for Väisänen. Väisänen is going straight for the net, and he tips it home into the twine, gives the Rangers a 3-2 lead with about 12 minutes to go in the game. But this was a phenomenal play by all three of these players. You got to start with Bryce McConnell-Barker here. He only gets a secondary assist, but he made this whole thing happen. He's in the neutral zone. He's got a defender all over him. He was somewhat off balance, and this did not stop him from making a picture-perfect pass all the way across the ice to Adam Sikora. Sikora then goes up the right side, and then he makes a perfect pass himself to Väisänen, and obviously Väisänen with the finish there on the doorstep. So that was awesome. The score stayed 3-2, and it looked like the Rangers were going to seal the victory. The Flyers had pulled their goalie. We're down to under a minute left, just a little bit under a minute to go in this game, and you get a situation where the puck comes out of the zone. Brennan Othmann picks it up going up the right side. Flyers only have one defenseman back, and Brett Berard is moving up the ice in the center of the ice. So Othmann, the defenseman, basically has to go get Othmann. He's got to try to get the puck away from him in one way or another, or Othmann's going to be able to bury it. So Othmann, the defender's coming, passes over to Berard. At that exact moment, though, the defenseman for Philly, Gill, he moved back toward the center of the ice, and Berard had a little bit of trouble handling this pass. It wasn't a perfect pass, but he just wasn't able to settle it. And before he could get the shot off, Gill basically knocked him out of the ice, prevented the goal from being scored. The Flyers go back the other way. They get set up in the offensive zone, some good passing, and they score the game tying goal with 14 seconds to go. So we end up going to overtime. And for anybody wondering, how overtime works in a game like this, it's exactly like the NHL. So 5 minutes, 3-on-3, just like NHL regular season games. I found it interesting to see who would start the overtime period for the Rangers. They go with Edstrom, Yaroslav Hemlar, and Matthew Robertson. And the Rangers got possession. Edstrom got the pass to Robertson for a one-timer that went wide. Rangers were able to keep possession. And then you had Rubrick and Sikora and Victor Mancini on the ice as well. This went back and forth. You got a couple of really nice saves by Dylan Garand. He robbed the Flyers' big prospect, Michkov, right in front of the net, denied him. And then he also had to make a really tough blocker save to knock the puck out of play and keep the Rangers alive at that point. And then Matthew Robertson made a really nice play in the final minute of overtime here. Just did a nice job bodying his guy, preventing him from getting to the net, and preventing a possible scoring opportunity for the Flyers. So nobody scores in overtime. We go to the shootout. Dylan Garand, this was his time to shine. He had a heck of a game to begin with, and we're talking a little bit more about Garand shortly here. But for the shootout, Avon takes a shot for the Flyers. Garand just stays with him all the way, got his left leg down, kept the puck out of the net. Then you had Ryder Korzak going for the Rangers, made some nifty moves, but missed the net high. Then you've got Michkov, again, the big prospect for the Flyers. I want to say they took him number 7 overall a couple of years back. Skills were off the charts for him, too, by the way. He was fun to watch in this because these games are kind of low stake in that they don't count in the standings. But I am not looking forward to watching the Rangers going up against this kid for the next 10 years or however long it's going to be. But regardless, he goes wide left, couple of nice moves. Garand stayed with him pretty much all the way, got his glove on the shot to deny him, deflected away from the net. Then you had Brennan Othmann for the Rangers. I thought Othmann was a little bit quiet in these two games, but he came through big here. He went way wide to the left side, went in, some good stick handling, went to the top corner and scored. So this gives the Rangers the 1-0 lead. Now it's Luchenko for the Flyers. He must score in the top of the third, so to speak, here to keep the game alive for the Flyers. Goes, way wide to his right, moves back in. Some pretty nifty moves on the doorstep here, but Garand just wouldn't bite, stayed with him, and actually was able to poke check it away. And Garand was fired up, and rightfully so. This was an emotional, high-intensity game, back and forth all the way. Obviously, that was a little bit of a gut punch for the Rangers, giving up the lead with just 14 seconds to go, but they regrouped. They found a way to get done in the shootout, and Dylan Garand had himself a heck of a game. And we're going to talk about, in just a second, we're going to shift our attention. I mean, we had to start with Adam Edstrom today, right? But when we're looking at this Friday game, which other Rangers, really stood out throughout this contest? To me, the two names that really stood out, and we've talked about them both on and off throughout the entire episode, but for me, it's Mancini and it's Garand, Victor Mancini and Dylan Garand, and we're going to talk about both of those players and their performance in just a second. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Talk about a couple of other standouts from the first of these two rookie games between the Rangers and the Flyers. And I got to go with Victor Mancini, a defenseman, and Dylan Garand, the goalie. Again, this was the Adam Edstrom show. We know that. But to me, game one, these were the two that really stood out. And Dylan Garand only played game one. The other two Ranger goalies split game two. And Mancini was very good in game two as well. But he really stood out, I thought, in game one. And just for some context here, Mancini was out there playing on the Rangers' top pairing with Matthew Robertson. I thought Robertson, too. We got to talk about him briefly here. Quick aside. Robertson, again, you guys mostly know the story. Former second-round pick, once a highly touted Ranger prospect, hasn't developed the way that they would all like him to, has yet to make his NHL debut. We saw them calling up guys like Brandon Scanlon and Connor Mackey last year, just journeyman defensemen, rather than Matthew Robertson, when they had a golden opportunity to at least let him get his feet wet in the NHL. They did not do that. Robertson overall, though, I thought he played pretty well. But it's interesting to me that these two guys, kind of the situation they find themselves in, because, yeah, they're defense partners. And if I had to bet, I would think that will probably be the top pairing at Hartford to start the season. And they seem to work pretty well together, the little that I've seen of them, together. But as much as they're partners, they're also kind of competing with each other, because these are the two young Ranger prospect defensemen that are currently playing at the AHL level. And it's entirely possible that when the Rangers need a defenseman at some point this season, one of these two is going to get the call. And will it be Robertson? Will it be Mancini? Only time is going to tell there, but it's probably going to have a lot to do, with whichever one outplays the other, throughout training camp, the preseason, and into the AHL season as well. If we assume that neither one of these players will make the team to start the season, which is probably a safe assumption. But if anybody needs a refresher on Mancini, 22 years old, big kid, 6'4", 220 pounds. And again, that does jump off the page, off the screen a little bit. You really do notice that when he's out there. So he's not quite Adam Edstrom or Matt Rempe, but the Rangers, they stay true to this strategy where they take a lot of really big players late in drafts. And I am not against that strategy at all, because by the final, 2 or 3 rounds, it kind of becomes a dart throw. So might as well just take a giant, why not? But yeah, Mancini, former 5th round pick by the Rangers back in 2022. He went number 159 overall. Last year was his final of 3 seasons at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. Skated in 40 games there, 4 goals, 6 assists, was also a +7. And he then joined the Hartford Wolfpack once his college season was over and had 3 assists and was also a +1 in 7 regular season games with the Pack. He then skated in 10 playoff games as well. 3 more assists, was also a +5. So he's somebody that, he doesn't get as much buzz as a lot of the other Ranger prospects, but it is an interesting situation because when you look at the AHL defensemen that the Rangers currently have, or rather that the Wolfpack currently has, it's 2 prospects and a bunch of guys. It's basically you've got Robertson and Mancini. Those are your 2 young prospects. Everybody else, Brandon Scanlon, Ben Harper, Connor Mackey, Bowie, the guy that they just brought in on PTO. Everybody that's there, other than these 2, is basically just a journeyman defenseman, an NHL, AHL swingman type. Now, eventually, you will have like Emery and Fortescue. They'll be coming along, and they'll throw their name in the hat too, because they're pretty big prospects for the Rangers. But for the time being right now, Robertson and Mancini, they have to take advantage. They have to grab the bull by the horns a little bit here because there's some other good defensemen on the way. Right now, though, they're the 2 young prospects at the Hartford Wolfpack. But Mancini, like I said, he was awesome. I believe he hit 2 posts over the 2 games. It was at least 1. Also made some really strong defensive plays as well. And he plays a very aggressive style. You very much notice him. And it's not just because of the size, but when he's on the ice, he tends to really pressure the puck, really get after it, really kind of pushes opponent around, the guy that's carrying the puck, plays a very aggressive, in-your-face style, and seems to be able to keep up with his opponents as well. Again, he's a big guy. There's some smaller, flyer forwards out there zipping around, and he seems to keep up with them stride for stride. So that was obviously very good to see. And I mentioned this earlier, but again, I think it's impressive that clearly this Ranger coaching staff, they have some trust in Mancini because when the Rangers were down 5-on-3, again, it was Mancini and Robertson and Edstrom. Those were the 3 players that they looked to go with. And Mancini also was the quarterback of the second power play unit. Robertson took care of the first power play unit. But you got to believe, at the Hartford Wolfpack, Mancini's going to be in a very similar role. You'll see him on the PK. You'll see him on the power play, at least the second power play, and very likely on that top pairing as well. But a couple of his better defensive plays. This was, I think these were all in Friday's game, the ones that I have here in my notes. But Mancini made a really nice play. I think it was the first period, standing up his guy on the rush. It looked like the Flyers were going into the Ranger zone with some steam, and Mancini just got in the way, wouldn't let him get by. And then you've got a situation where the Rangers are on the power play. And, again, Matthew Robertson is the guy quarterbacking the top power play unit. But Mancini was on the ice not too long after that. He did a great job keeping an offensive zone possession alive for the Rangers on the power play. He was able to get to a loose puck and elude a defender all in one motion. So the puck is loose. He's moving in toward the net, the direction of the net. He gets the puck and immediately, stick handles and gets around a defender, gets a shot away, was not able to score. But then at the end of this power play, the Flyers have a guy coming out of the penalty box and they hit their guy. Mancini was able to get back fairly quickly and boarded his guy into the boards, the guy that was just out of the penalty box. And when I say that he rode him into the boards, I'm not talking about he was along the boards and Mancini came over and just nudged him. No, this guy was at the center of the ice trying to get to the Ranger net. And Mancini came over and basically almost from the exact center of the ice, not quite that far, but close, basically just rides him all the way over to the boards and puts him at the boards. Wasn't like a bone jarring hit, but it was just one of those plays where it was just get out of here. You're not getting to my net. We're going over here. So that was awesome to see as well. Can't say enough about the job that Mancini did during these 2 games, and especially in the first one. But yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing, how he does with the Hartford Wolfpack. And sooner or later, I get the feeling at least one of these 2 at one time or another this upcoming season will probably make their Ranger debut. Now, again, maybe they'll go with one of the veterans. You can call up Harper. You can call up who are the other ones? Mackey, somebody like that, Scanlon. But yeah, I mean, to me, I think at a certain point, you at least want to get a look. You can do what you did last year with Othmann, playing in 3 games. You can do what you did last year, the year before that with Will Cooley when he played in 4 games. You could see something like that for either one of these Ranger defensemen. And we also have to talk about Dylan Garand. He was awesome. They didn't really keep stats in this. I wasn't keeping track of shots on goal or anything like that. But I would say in game 1, I mean, he had to have made, I would say, probably in the high 20s. If I had to take a stab at it, I would say maybe 28 saves for Garand. The Flyers got off to a really slow start in this game. The Rangers were dominating early. The first 10 minutes all belonged to the Rangers. The Flyers didn't get their first shot on goal, no joke, until probably about 10 or 11 minutes into this game. So Garand had it quiet early in the game. But I've talked about this before. I think sometimes that's even more impressive, in some ways, because, you're a goalie, and I'm sure, you want to face a couple of shots, get into the action a little bit. And Garand just standing there. All the action is on the other side of the ice. And for him to be as sharp as he was, despite, having to stand there and potentially go cold for a little while, that's very impressive as well. But you had some athletic saves, some point blank saves by Garand, a couple of saves on a deflection, couple of saves, during some scrums. You get those chaotic, melees in front of the net, and Garand was able to get on top of the puck. I mentioned the overtime saves. He came up clutch there to keep the Rangers alive. And of course, they ultimately won it in the shootout, thanks in no small part to Dylan Garand, who stopped all three of the shooters that he faced during the shootout. He denied Michkov several times. I mentioned him earlier. That's the Flyers' really big prospect. I want to say Michkov actually did score a goal in this game. I wasn't really keeping track of Flyer stats, but he could have had more. He had some really good opportunities, just a menace with the puck, but Garand stayed with him all the way multiple times, including the one time in overtime. So, yeah, Garand was awesome. And, he only played game one. Like I mentioned, they had Boyko and Olas split game two. But of the three, Garand is far and away, the biggest prospect of those three. And I do think that Boyko, and especially Olas, played very well in game two. But if one of these guys, has a future with the Rangers, maybe in a future season, there's a situation where I would think Igor's still going to be here. You never know what can happen. But if Igor's still here, maybe you look at Dylan Garand as the backup whenever Jonathan Quick decides to hang up the skates. That's probably how it's going to go. If you're the Rangers, you could always go out and add another veteran as your backup goalie in free agency. But, you got somebody that pretty soon is probably going to be knocking on the door as far as being, an NHL goalie. So good stuff by Dylan Garand there. Obviously, another prospect that we'll keep track of throughout the season with the Hartford Wolfpack. But I figure we could pretty much call it there. As I mentioned in our next episode, going to be focusing in a little bit more on Saturday's game between the Rangers and Flyers and who stood out there and whose stock improved, whose stock maybe fell off a little bit, who had kind of a rough showing. There were a couple of them as well. And we'll get to all that in the next episode. A couple of final things that I got to mention here before we call it, though. Fantasy hockey. So at this point on Monday, I'm basically going to remove everybody that I haven't heard back from, people that played last year, remove them and replace them with some of the potential new players who've been patiently waiting to be taking care of that. So I guess if you played last year, this is your final warning to get back in touch with me. You got about 24 hours. Also, we're going to be doing an episode in the future where we read all of your stories. I've heard from some of you already. If you haven't responded yet, definitely email this to me or DM me on Twitter. What we're going to do is we're going to read everybody's stories from this past year's playoff run for the Rangers. Describe where you were, who you were with, what you were doing during any of the Ranger 4 overtime wins. We've done things like this in the past, and it's always a really fun episode, and I'll read those stories on a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Also, it is Sunday as I'm recording this, which means we are T-minus 1 week away from Ranger hockey. It is preseason hockey, but it's still Ranger hockey. The Rangers and Bruins will be playing each other this upcoming Sunday at 5 p.m. Cannot wait for that. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.